I never truly envisioned myself sharing a chapter of my life this intimate, but experience has taught me that existence is a master of the unexpected. My name is Elise. At 44 years old, my life has been defined by the quiet rhythm of single motherhood. For over 2 decades, it has just been me and my son, Lenny. Now 22, he has grown into a man I am proud of. Yet in my eyes, there is always that shadow of the boy I raised alone. We have always navigated the turbulent waters of life as a team, anchored by a bond that felt unbreakable. However, one particular evening, the air in our home shifted in a way I still struggle to categorize. It began simply enough. Lenny returned home, looking utterly drained, the kind of exhaustion that settles deep in the bones. He admitted he wasn't feeling well, likely the result of burning the candle at both ends with his demanding studies and part-time work. As he stood by the window, staring out into the encroaching gloom of a bitter winter night, I felt that familiar, maternal pull to protect him. Our house was drafty, and the chill was beginning to seep through the floorboards. I suggested he lie down in my bed, the warmest spot in the house, to recover his strength. He looked so small under the weight of his fatigue that I instinctively covered him with a heavy, thick blanket. At first, the gesture was purely clinical, the act of a mother nursing a sick child. But as I lay down beside him, just to offer a bit of extra warmth in the freezing room, the atmosphere thickened. I felt him shift. He moved closer, seeking the heat of another body to ward off the shivers. I tried to remain indifferent, telling myself it was a natural reaction to the cold. But then his arm draped over me. He pulled me into a gentle embrace, much like he used to do as a frightened toddler during a thunderstorm. I froze. A strange, rhythmic thrumming began in my chest, the sound of my own heart echoing in the silent room. Lenny's breathing began to steady, slowing into the deep cadence of sleep. Yet I remained wide awake, hyper-aware of his presence. I kept repeating a mantra in my head. This is just comfort. This is just family. But, under the heavy layers of the blanket, the reality felt more complex. His grip tightened almost imperceptibly. The warmth between us wasn't just physical anymore. It was an energy, a tension, that vibrated in the air. Then, I felt something that made my breath hitch, a physical hardness that I couldn't ignore. My pulse became a frantic drumbeat. I tried to rationalize it, to tell myself he was asleep and unaware of his own body, but the confusion began to coil in my stomach like a serpent. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. I felt trapped in a paradox of wanting to flee and wanting to stay in the safety of that warmth. Lenny shifted again, lifting his head just enough to meet my eyes. The gaze he leveled at me was unlike anything I'd seen from him before. It wasn't the look of a son, nor was it entirely the look of a stranger. It was a fragile mixture of profound safety and terrifying nervousness. Neither of us spoke. The silence was so heavy, it felt as if the walls were leaning in to listen. His fingers began to move against my arm, a slow, absent-minded caress that sent jolts of electricity through my skin. I tried to maintain a mask of calm, terrified that he would feel the frantic racing of my heart through my ribs. I was drowning in a sea of conflicting roles. I was his mother, his protector, his rock, yet here, in the shadows of the bedroom, I felt like a woman standing on the edge of a precipice. The attraction was a silent storm, invisible but powerful enough to shake my foundations. Just as the weight of the silence became unbearable, Lenny whispered my name. The sound was so fragile, so laden with unspoken questions, that I felt my resolve crumbling. I wanted to pull away, to re-establish the boundaries of our lives, but my limbs felt leaden. Finally, the spell was broken by his own hand. Lenny retreated slightly, a shaky, self-deprecating laugh escaping his lips as he rubbed the back of his neck in the darkness. The flush on his cheeks was visible even in the dim light. "Sorry, Mum," he muttered, his voice thick, with a sudden, agonizing uncertainty. "I didn't mean to make things weird." The weight of the world rushed back into the room. I reached out, placing a hand on his shoulder, a gesture meant to anchor us both back to reality. "It's okay, Lenny," I whispered, though my own voice lacked its usual conviction. We've been each other's only world for so long. Sometimes, the lines get blurred when we're tired. He nodded, but the relief in his eyes was fleeting. Just as we began to breathe again, the sharp, intrusive ring of the doorbell shattered the moment. It was our neighbor, Mark. Standing at the door with a friendly, concerned smile, Mark offered a sense of normalcy that I desperately craved. Yet I felt as though he could see right through my skin to the turmoil beneath. As Mark stepped inside to check on our heating, I could feel Lenny's eyes boring into my back. There was a sharp, jagged edge to his silence, something that looked dangerously like jealousy. Mark's presence was a balm, yet it highlighted the fracture that had just occurred in my relationship with my son. When Mark finally left, the silence that returned was not peaceful, it was deafening. Lenny stood in the hallway, arms crossed, a wall of cold intensity. When I asked if he was all right, his shrug was dismissive, almost cold. He retreated to his room, and the click of his door felt like a finality, a period at the end of a sentence I wasn't ready to finish. I sat on my bed, the house feeling larger and emptier than it ever had before. My mind was a whirlwind of what-ifs, and why. But then, a soft knock came. Lenny reappeared, sitting beside me on the mattress, his gaze fixed firmly on his clasped hands. "I don't know what to do with these feelings, Mum," he confessed, his voice a mere thread of sound. "I don't want to lose what we have, but I can't pretend tonight didn't happen." I didn't have the answers. I realized then that we were both lost in a landscape without a map. I pulled him into a protective embrace, a hug that tried to bridge the gap between who we were yesterday and who we had become tonight. We sat there, two souls clinging to one another in the dark, realizing that while the path forward was shrouded in fog, we would have to find our way, step by agonizing step, together. "Maybe we just need time," Lenny whispered into the silence. "Maybe we just need to think." I nodded against his shoulder, knowing that the journey of understanding had only just begun.